growth and development, and it's going to happen. Many of the projects that we see, they're already on the books, and if they're going through a process, the question is, how do you control some of those things that are happening at the present time? One of the things that I believe, what I would do if it hasn't been done is that if I'm elected mayor and it hasn't been done, the first thing I'll do is request of the city commission to have a workshop to sit and talk and dialogue about growth and how we handle that growth. That workshop would not only involve the city commission, but that workshop would involve all the stakeholders, the citizens, the development community, the business community, everyone that has an interest in discussing that, and come up with a plan about what we as a community want DeLand to look like in 10, 15 years. Change takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. But if we lay out a platform wherein we identify what it is that we want to look like as a community, such as utilizing low-impact development as part of that process, and tell the development community what it is that we expect of them. When they walk through the door, they will know what the expectations are. And so that would be one of the first things that I would do if I'm elected mayor. As you can see, these are very complicated issues. Nothing is simple. It doesn't matter whether it relates to school, which the city does not, may work with the school board to do certain things, but all of these issues interrelate one to the other. And what we should realize as a community is that the city of DeLand can't do this by itself. What needs to occur is that that collaboration, coordination, and communication that was spoken about earlier, it needs to occur between the city of DeLand, the county of Volusia. And when it comes to some of the funding issues that are critical to this community, the state has to be involved in that. It doesn't matter whether it's transportation or whether it's sewer and water or what those issues are. The city can't do it all by itself. And it is important for us as a city, to reach across the borders or the jurisdictional issues, to address, some of our needs. One of the things that, is, it happens, almost on a daily basis, relates to law enforcement when we talk about those jurisdictional issues. The way that annexations have occurred in this community, those annexations have, especially when we speak about Spring Hill, they have encompassed Spring Hill, and for law enforcement to get into some sections of Spring Hill, they have to go through city areas to get there. That raises some concern with law enforcement. We need to strengthen our mutual aid agreements between the Sheriff's Office and the City of DeLand Police Department, so that there will be some continuity in the enforcement of those laws in both the county and the city. You can do it through mutual aid, but it requires communication between those agencies. And as it relates to affordable housing, change has to occur with many of the policies that we operate under. When I was with county government, I was in county government for 28 and a half years, and housing was one of the areas that I was responsible for. Back in the day, when we talked about affordable housing, one of the things that we did, and it came from collaboration and communication with the citizens, was that we developed a down payment assistance program where we were building market rate housing based on whatever the market costs were at that time. We built market rate housing, but to make it affordable, we subsidized the cost down to make it affordable to individuals in the lower income ranges. But we also had a funding source through the Sadowski Act, through the state, that helped to fund that initiative. What has occurred is that the state has utilized those dollars rather than for affordable housing. They have utilized those dollars in other arenas. Where we need to lobby with the state is for them to put those dollars back into the hands of local government so that they can utilize those dollars to begin to address some of the situations with affordability, that are not currently being addressed. Also, we can do things like density bonuses. Change your policies in the developments that are being built. Sit down and again, a community-wide discussion about what you want, but you can build density bonuses into the development of apartments, even into the development of subdivisions. But it takes a lot of time and effort looking at the rules and the regulations and making decisions about what's important to the community, and based on those decisions of what's important to the community, then changing your policies to reflect that. The city has started to do some of this, especially with the change in the residential, allowing 750 square foot homes to be built on some of the smaller lots in this community. They have started some of this, but we need to look at all of those rules and regulations and see where changes can be made, to make it easier, for organizations like Habitat for Humanity, to build housing that is affordable within the community. So those are some of the things that I would do if I'm elected mayor, and to help make change that's necessary, that's going to be beneficial to the community as a whole. Last thing, and I want to, so that again, you know who I am, and I had a discussion the other, a couple days ago, but as it relates to, the community, I'm an individual that's very accepting of everyone, and I feel that everyone should be involved in the discussions of this community. It doesn't matter who you are, who you represent, how you look, or anything. I'm one of those individuals, that say, come on, sit down at the table, because every voice is important. When I look at my family, I have a transgender individual in my family. And I remember a few years ago, I had to tell my aunt and uncle that they needed to be accepting of their child who made a decision that they were going to change their lifestyle and stuff. To me, it was, she changed from her to a him. It was her choice at that time, and we need to be accepting of the decisions that individuals make and ensure that when someone comes into city government, regardless of who they are, that they are treated fairly, they are treated with respect, and they are, in treating them with respect, that they receive the same services at the same level that anyone else receives. So that's who I am. I accept everyone for who they are, regardless of what their beliefs are or where they decide they want to land in this country of ours or city of ours. So thank you.
We have an online question. In what leadership capacity have you served the city of DeLand in the last 5 years?
I haven't. Okay, but let me just tell you, I worked in government for over 40 years, county government 28 years, state government for 6 years. I worked in the nonprofit sector for 5 years. at the CEO level and as a vice president of HR. I presently serve as the chairman of the board for the African American Museum here in DeLand. I sit on the board for the Children's Partnership, Community Partnership for Children. I sit on that board, and I'm also a clergy member here and pastor of church here in the community. So that's my civic and community involvement.
All right. Do we have any audience questions?
I'd like to ask you the same question I asked the others. It's always fair. You heard what I spoke about, my 90-year-old friend who was victimized by the city of DeLand, and their answer to it was to send it to the attorneys and victimize him once again. And when confronted with the politicians, they just all kind of shrugged their shoulders and were fine with that. How would you treat that 90-year-old different that was victimized by the city? Would you just send it to the attorneys, or would you advocate for him and see that he's made whole?
I can't answer that specifically because I don't know what the laws are that govern it. But what I have done in the past when I ran into situations like that is try and find out what the issues are and what are the means that we would have as a local government, to resolve that issue. And not knowing all the circumstances or the limitations, of that issue, I would just have to say that I would ask the questions and ask because it's the city manager is the one responsible for day-to-day operations. I would ask him to look into it and come back and report what we can do to help with it rather than what we can't do.
Thank you.
One last thing. Go to reggieformayor.com and it'll give you history and background of who I am. And if you'd like to support my candidacy, please do. Thank you.
So that was the end of our count list. I want to say that the amount of interest that we had from candidates who wanted to come here and wanted to say that we see you and that we hear you and that we represent you is amazing. And it's a change. And it's a huge change. And so I want to thank all of the candidates that were here tonight. And I want to remind you to go to DeLand.org and check out the candidate questionnaires, which have more specific answers about some of these things. And I want to remind you to go vote. Oh, and tip your bartenders, and thank you for the Abbey for hosting.